Hi everyone and welcome to the show, and this week we're going to be painting Albert. Hi, I'm Michael, portrait artist from Perth, Western Australia. One of the things I want to concentrate on this week is how do you paint those difficult foreheads, the heavily creased ones, so they're not overdone and still remain looking realistic. That's what I want to cover. Also, I want to talk about my journey of becoming a professional artist, so hopefully if I share my journey, it'll help you on your journey as well. Hope you enjoy the show. So without further ado, roll the intro and let's paint.
We'll just put in a little bit of a background on this portrait of Albert. I'm using a black that I've mixed up, which is 60% ultramarine blue and 40% burnt umber. I'll just pop this in just so we can see the silhouette of Albert a little bit more clearly. It actually makes painting the portrait easier. This is just a quick look at my palette. I got asked what I show in my palette. It's just a glass palette. I've just painted the underside just a neutral beigey color, and that's me. I'm just mixing up 4 different values for the black. So I'm just adding a little bit more titanium white in here. This is the blue-brown mixture, a little bit more titanium white on each one of them. And then I start applying that lighter mixture as I get closer to the face. This starts to give you just a little bit more contrast and definition around the face. It just makes the background look a little bit more interesting rather than just purely black there. So we'll get past this part and then we'll be into painting Albert. Now, what I'm actually using is a filbert. This is a little bit small. I was running a little bit late and I hadn't cleaned one of my brushes. I grabbed this and I think it's a number 4 filbert. I do love filberts. I like really enjoying filberts. So it's a little bit small for this job, so it took me a little bit longer just to fill it in. But the paintbrush itself is not going to make you successful. The paintbrush is not going to make you a great artist. I don't care what they say. Doesn't matter what paintbrush you get. I mean, there's people out there painting with paintbrushes they use for houses. So it's just one of those things. Now, I'm just going to show you a little bit of the hair as I paint this, and you'll notice as I move the brush, I'm using the edge and I do some dabs, but then as I move down, I'll twist that brush around, make sure it's all jiggly and uneven. And I always say the more uneven and the more undefined you can make these things, much, much better. You don't want crisp lines. You're not an architectural draftsman trying to draw perfect lines. You move around your canvas, put a little bit of paint here, smudge a little bit of paint over here, make that brush move. The more messy you can make this and the less blended you can make it, the more realistic it's going to look, because it's all about causing texture on the surface for the eyes to grip. Now, the eyes, once this is done, because it's a bit wrong at the moment, and that's just playing a trick on your eyes because you've got a blank canvas to the right-hand side of this here. But what we're doing is we're actually giving something for the eyes to grip on. Now, this is me making the different values for the actual face. You'll see that one's a little bit dark, so I'll just put a little bit yellow. So this palette I've got, which is titanium white, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, ruben, the pyro ruben there, and bismuth yellow, and there's my black up pre-mixed. So the only 2 ways of lightening this is either by using the white or my yellow. In this case I want to keep it to the orangey side, so I'll just put a little bit more yellow. If you want to darken, that's just some of the previous mixture, and the great thing about using that, I can put it in, it won't hurt the color at all. It'll give it a slight darkness, which is obviously what I was looking for there. So the only way I can darken this mixture is by using either ultramarine blue or burnt umber. So it makes the mixtures really simple. I'm not having to guess and, what did I do there? What did I do here? This is a really basic palette, but it makes your painting easy. Now we're going to put in some values on that right hand side. I just want to get started with some of those darker values. And now I'm going to be putting in the crease lines. Now, an interesting note about these crease lines, you'll notice I lift this brush and then repress it. And what I'm looking for is different thicknesses along the line. I don't want to draw a perfectly even line. Now, just so you can see what I'm doing, I've actually sketched it in some lines here. And drawing does you no harm at all. To put your own lines in as a bit of a guide. Don't have to stick to them verbatim. They're just a guide. Now, here's one of the techniques I like to use on the creases, and that is put a little bit of paint down and move away from where I did the other paint and actually come to it from a different angle. Now, I'm just using those lines as a bit of a guide, but you'll notice as I start to swing in, the lines are thicker, thinner, they move around a lot, they don't join up properly. Sometimes, my brush ends up underneath the previous crease line. All good stuff. The more variety, the more abstract you can make this, the better. And there you go. I'm moving well away from where I was now and popping another. And this is just a certain value I've got on here. So I'm using just one value at the moment. And I'm looking for where I think that value should go on those crease lines and moving away and putting it in place, which looks really weird. It really does. It takes a long time to get used to it and realizing that I'm not actually painting creases. I'm just painting values where values go. You can even see that line end up above the other line. One will end up below the line. I'll move away and then come towards it because I know that will give me the imperfections that I'm looking for. Now, that'll drive some people absolutely nuts. Imperfections? What's he doing? This is when you do abstract, and I'm not doing photorealism here, so I want abstract realism. I want imperfections. The more imperfections I can give this, the better off I am. The more grip I will put on that surface for the eyes to lock onto. And don't worry, the eyes will fix it. But as we start, you see I'm moving around. I am changing values. You might not be able to see it clearly at this stage, but I want different values along those crease lines. So I don't want just one value the whole way round. You see I just bring it in, join it up, not really too fussed. It doesn't really matter how ugly these lines are either. So when we learn how to do this, I normally teach people by painting twigs in a still life, because you would actually paint your twigs first and then you would actually cut in the background towards the twigs so you can make them thinner, thicker, and you can actually manipulate the thickness of the twigs using the background. So we're going to use that same technique here on the ridge lines of the forehead, rather than paint it and then trying to get the ridge lines absolutely perfect, which is I don't know how you do that. I'm sure some people do. I can't. I suppose it's cheating, but I just put them in and then we will cut in around them. Now I start to change the values. I've got that dark value. By the way, the values here, I'm actually using the red, the yellow, and then mixing a lot of burnt umber, and I've actually put a touch of my black mixture that I pre-made into here. Try not to do too much that black because it does have that blue in it, but there's no harm in getting a little bit of blue into that forehead. You're probably not going to see it, but your brain will register it, and that's why you will get this effect. Now, somebody looking, I've put Albert on the right hand side here that I'm painting, and I do get a lot of comments. People say, wow, look at the detail. It's not detail, it's small marks, small painting marks that I made, and lots of value shifts. And there's the difference. I'm not painting detail, I'm painting value shifts. So my rule of thumb is the more value shifts I can get into Albert's forehead, the more detailed it'll look to you. So it's that illusion, it's almost trickery going on. That's what I love about painting. So that is what I'm doing. You just see I'm just putting a certain value in there, and look at the shapes that I'm creating. And this is really important, that when you do your values, not just square or round, they're jiggly, they cut in, they'll cut in on those lines up here. And I don't care whether I cut over the top of the line or not. It doesn't matter. I don't care if I make part of that line disappear. You look at the creases on somebody's forehead. They're not a constant same thickness, same value, or same, light or darkness. And they disappear and they reappear and they twist and they turn and they're jiggly and they're messy. And if you can go for that, you're going to do really, really well. So all I'm doing now is I'm deliberately moving to different spots on the canvas. so that I'm not starting and trying to work right to left or left to right. I'm trying to just put those value shifts in, and you can start to see the effect it's going to have on that side. And when we come back and put some highlights in, because we're going to leave them to a little bit later, we're going to get the canvas covered first, and I'll probably cover half the canvas and treat this as a half and half. I can't remember which one I did this now, but we're going to find out. Put some reds in there as well, and here comes some of that black, and I'll just smudge it into the other color. Nothing accurate here, no fussing, just smudge it in there. Let your eyes, let the viewer's eyes do the work. And yes, and there we go, some highlights in there, and they are way off. They're not white, as you can well imagine. They're nowhere near white. They are a very just a light mixture. Use titanium white as a base. Then I've mixed the yellow and the red and a little bit of burnt umber, and really taken the brightness out of them. But of course, against that background, they do look pretty bright. And then we can move away. We'll get our next color. You see an overhand grip going onto the brush. That allows me to jiggle that brush, squash it down, pull it up, because I want different thicknesses and I want different textures. The paints I'm using, by the way, are from Geneva. These are Geneva fine oils. They've actually got the medium mixed in. I think I might have said this on one of my other videos, so I don't have to worry about the medium, so they'll flow quite well. And I must admit, when you're painting portraits, to have a paint that just flows, and people say, what about the texture? What do you want in pastel? Well, you can do that. I've got some Winsor Newtons, exactly the same colors in Winsor Newtons, and I can just pull that out of a tube when I want something thicker. I just use that straight out of a tube. No mediums, no nothing. That's how I use that. Now, this small dabbing motion I'm using is to create texture. I'm trying to push the paint on and then pull it, so we're getting a bit of surface tension going on there. And again, I say, when you're doing this, don't just paint in one area. Paint a little bit of area, happy with that. Let's move to another blank part of the canvas. I think this is really important. We shouldn't be doing any correcting at this stage. We've done our color matching, we've got our value right, and let's just put that in where we believe it should go. And you see I've worked on a section there, and then I'll move across and I'll work on another section, and see there's no evenness to the line. There's not a nice straight up and down. It's curvy, it's jiggly. As I put the next value in there, I'll smudge it into the previous value as well. This is really good fun. When you get used to painting foreheads, and you can do, I did struggle with this for a little while. I tried to be too perfect. And I think it's just in our nature, especially as artists, we're trying to create something, and we are our worst enemy for judging. But there you go. A little bit of work. We will come back and put some more highlights into Albert's forehead. But just there, you can see by smudging, by not being careful, just laying in different values, and as many values as I could possibly get. I think there's about 12 or 13 value shifts. There's 10 values on a value scale, but I kind of mix different values together and really shift it around. And you can put a little bit more red in each one of your paints, or a little bit more yellow in there, a little bit more brown. Have a real play around. Look, I said, if you can master value control, if you can master your values, it means you can switch these colors out for bright colors. You might be one of these people that like to paint a face with blues and yellows and reds and greens. It won't matter. Just make sure that if you're putting a red in there or a blue in there or a green in there, make sure that green is the right value for the right spot. If it's the right value for the right spot, it will work. It will work every time. Now, here's another one. Now, this is his glasses. And I'm sure if you take a close look at the glasses, you'll pick up that they're not round. They are actually round glasses on his face. But I don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. In fact, the less you worry about getting the round perfect, the more you'll give the viewer's eyes to work on and fix. And as they're fixing stuff, they're not getting a compass out now or a round coin and putting it, oh, look, it's not quite round. He's done. No, they just look at that and go, wow, didn't he paint those glasses great? They're round as. And I don't have to worry if they get too thick, too thin. I'm just going to mark them in for now. And you'll notice that my lines just are very uneven. We don't have to worry about that because the background, or in this case, the flesh colours in the eye area, we'll be able to use that to straighten any of those little wiggles out. So let's not try and get perfection. Let's just get the canvas covered, and then as we now work on the background area, we'll be able to cut that forward, and any little lumps or bumps that we want to even, we'll be able to use the colouring of the flesh that's actually inside that eye to even those lumps and bumps out. So again, now we're looking on the creases of the eye. Again, I've drawn them in. Normally you don't need to. You just look at the face and then just map them out. Exactly what I'm doing here. But drawing's good for you. If you have a think about all the great athletes, they all practice the basics, and the basics of painting is drawing. So it's good to practice. It's good to put them in every now and again and see how you're going, and see if it would look different if you'd drawn it as to just going freestyle, basically looking at the picture and just trying to do it without actually getting a drawing in there first. Singers, they rehearse, before they go on stage. They're in the background, doing all the vocal warm-ups. They do the basics. Practicing the basics is the secret to anybody's success, and professionals practice the basics all the time. They may not show you these basics that we're doing at the moment. They may show you more advanced techniques because they're sexy and they look cool, Paint, in sergeant style. We'll just start with a blank canvas and just mold it in. All good, sexy stuff, and yes, it's not hard to do, and it's actually easier to do if you train yourself this way, because you start knowing what you're looking for. You start understanding, that's how I'm going to do this. I've got all these creases. Look at this mess. I love this because I'm looking at it, and remember, I'm only 1 foot off the canvas, and it looks shocking. It looks like, oh my goodness, how is this ever going to look like real skin, real flesh? Don't worry about it. We know the rules. We're just going to put these lines in. We don't have to worry about thickness. In fact, the more differences we've got in the thicknesses, the better. The more value shifts. You can see some of the value shifts. I've been putting in the lines in there. Remember, when it's crease lines, just because we've got some glasses there, I've actually just done some basics and just extended them below the rim of that glass there. And I'll remember, they'll either stay or they'll go. Don't worry about it. Just force yourself to put them in because they will extend below the glass line, and then we'll see how we go as we paint, because we can take liberties. We're artists and we're allowed to do that. In this top eyelid area, we'll just put some light marks over it, and you just see that nice flick of the brush. This is just getting more value into that area. I just felt it lacked a little bit of value in that area. I needed a little bit of something just to give it a lift, and that's all I'm doing there. I'm not trying to be too careful. Just flick a little bit in here and there, and she should be good to go. As we work our way down, I'm just changing again their values. Now, the great thing about a limited palette, I don't have to guess on my mixture. I know it's got a yellow base. I've put some red in there. If it's too red, I add some brown. If it's too yellow, I'll just add a little bit more red. If I'm getting a little bit green in there, green is on the opposite side to red. So if I've got some yellow and some brown, and I'm starting to get a greeny tinge in there, throw a bit more red in there. So if we have a look at our color wheel, if you had a look at one, you'd have blue, and the opposite to blue is brown. So if it's too blue, put a bit of brown in. If it's too brown, put a bit of blue in. We're trying to stay away from blue because of the actual skin color here. So, but I know I'm just mixing yellows and reds. If I get too much yellow and brown in there, I'm probably going to start swinging into green, so I'll put a bit of red in there. If it's just purely too yellow, I'll put some red in there. And if it's too red, we can knock it back with a little bit of brown. Very, very simple when you look at your wheel. And by keeping it simple and keeping the colors simple, you don't have to think too much. But you get these base colors, the essential palette, as I call it, the essential palette down. And look, there are painters out there that have used 3 colors as their essential palette. So it just proves what you can actually do with colors, because it's the values doing all the work. But you start off with these, and then as you start painting, you might find that you want to experiment with a green. You might find that you want to put a purple in there to mix in your blacks, because you want to see what your blacks and your shadows are going to look like with some purple in them. go for it. Just introduce one color at a time, get used to using it, see if you do use it, and if it is, guess what? It earns a spot on your palette. That's how you see the palettes, and you see them with all these colors on there, and they're what we call convenience colors. So you get your essential colors, that's going to do everything for you, and then your convenience colors, the ones that you actually like. You don't need them. You might need them for a bright orange traffic cone or something, or a lady's wearing a super high brooch, and you go and buy a very specialty color for that. But other than that, you actually don't need them at all. So you can just see here, I'm just finishing off that eye, and now you can see these value shifts. So the name of the game when you're doing this is more value shifts equals the illusion of more detail. It's not that there's more detail, it's just the illusion of more detail. You see now I'm just finishing off that black rim, and I don't even care if I go a little bit on the black. You don't have to worry about these things, because you can just go back over with a bit of black and just touch it in. That's the beauty of oil paint. So we don't have to concern ourselves too much. See just a little bit more contrast coming in, and it's just the value shifts. And you see how I'm working very small marks, because so this is one thing that I learned early on. I used to try and do big brush strokes, and put a big marker down. Well, the problem is that then that means that value that I put down covers that big area. And that's a real problem, because that then stops me having the detail, the illusion of detail that I want. And so I quickly learnt not to do that. Use smaller brush strokes, take your time, move around, and then just fill in the blank pieces of canvas and move on. And by getting the detail in there, from the illusion of detail by the different value structures, away you go. Now, that is starting to form all the eye. Now I'm going to put the eye in the center. Again, I will say, things don't look correct when you very first start off. They don't look correct when you first start. You just have to trust it, especially when you're close to the canvas. Just ignore it, because it's going to look a real mess and nothing's going to look right. If you're wondering, on my left hand I wear a glove, because that's the hand that I have my rag in, or my paper towel to wipe my brush. So any paint is actually coming onto the glove, not onto my fingers, even though all the paints I use are non-toxic. I don't like toxic stuff at all. Now, someone was asking me, when I started this process and became an artist, like a professional artist, started selling works, what was the biggest hurdles I had to overcome, and how did I do it? And I can tell you now the biggest hurdles, and I think we talked about this last time, was mindset. All those negative mindsets, and so I wrote them down on a piece of paper, and I wrote the opposite, which is the positives, on another piece of paper. And when I had that done, I screwed the negative ones up and put them in the bin. They're gone. And I just read the positives every night, and I read them every morning, and that helped me break through, because you have to identify your biggest limiting beliefs, and when you write them down, it allows you to reframe them, repurpose them, say them in a different way. So for myself, it allowed me to claim a successful artist identity, one that I live and I breathe. Now, I'm making YouTube videos now, and I don't profess to be the best YouTube video maker in the world, but I just have a passion for my art. I have a passion to helping other artists succeed, and so that's what I want to share. So I found one of the biggest challenges for artists was finding their audience, and I thought that might be interesting. So because I come from a business, so I actually came from the business world. I did art as therapy, as a bit of escapism, and then it just morphed into a profession of its own. I was able to step away. I still got a couple of businesses on the go, but I was able to step out of that world and more into this world. So the first thing that I learned is that my art isn't going to be for everyone. And an abstract artist taught me this, and thank goodness he did. and he calls it his 0.01% rule. That's how many people that see his art actually love it enough to buy it. Oh my goodness. So you can imagine how many people have to see his art to actually buy it. But those people that buy it, the collectors that buy it, don't just buy one piece. They only buy 2, 3. That he gets raving fans. But his rule was, my art isn't for everyone. I know that only 0.01% of people that see my art love it enough. There's people who love it, but these are the people who love it enough to buy it. So if you're a bit downcast and going, oh, no one's buying my art, how many people are showing and knowing that only 0.01% will love it enough to actually buy it? That was a really good takeaway for myself. So then the secret becomes, well, how do you find your audience? So your audience connects with the meaning behind your art, not just the brushstrokes. Now, this is a big one. So, as you know, I do portraits. I actually do still lifes as well. But in portraits, it's all about connection for me. It's all about people connection. So I really have to meet the people. I like to have a conversation with them because my art has to connect. The meaning of the art for the person who's receiving it must connect to them in some way. So in this instance, Albert here, his son is taking over an engineering company. His son is taking over from dad. You know, it's always dad that sought the advice. And so he wants dad in his office. He can look up at that, think of a question. He can be looking at dad and he thinks he'll be inspired, and he hopes that having them there, he'll be inspired to actually make good decisions. Now, in all my portraits, I get the person to write on the back their message. So this is from a father to a son. The last one we did was the father to a daughter, and I had dad write a message on the back of that to the daughter. The message on the back is just as meaningful as the art. We have to get our ego out the way. We're just the conduit for connection to happen. This is our way of helping these connections happen. So what Albert wrote on the back of this one was, you know the answer. So you can imagine when he's there in his office and he's thinking of a question, he's looking up at Albert, and then he knows what's written on the back. He knows what's written on the back. You know the answer. And therefore, you don't get a smiley, happy face. And that's why you probably see a lot of my paintings don't have the super smiley, happy faces going on. Because there's a meaningful message. Say my corporate paintings, I always get the CEOs or whoever I'm doing the corporate painting for to actually write on the back, what is their philosophy of business? What is their message for the business that they're managing here? And there we go. So it's all about connection. I'll just make a quick comment about that art and then I'll get back into that for you. But if you have a look at that eye, there's about 4 or 5 different tones. One technique that I do is, you noticed when I had the blue in there, I just put a little bit of titanium white on the edge of my brush, and I dabbed the titanium white in different spots, and then I wiped the brush clean, and then I smudged the white into the blue underneath. It gives them more randomness and more abstractness, rather than just put titanium or just get a color that I want and try and put a brush stroke in there of a color. I find by putting a couple of dots of white in, and you'll see me do this around the place, and then smudging that in, I get a more random effect. This is really effective on cheeks as well. You know, someone's got a rosy cheek. You can actually mix the color of that redness and try putting a brush stroke there. However, you know rose is red, and you already paint the base color underneath. You can just dab your brush into the red, put a little tiny bit on there, put a few spots around randomly in the area where you want the red, clean the brush off, then smudge those red spots down, not so they disappear, but just to take the edge off them. And when you stand back, you can see through. It's not a solid brush stroke anymore. You can actually see through into the color underneath and the randomness. The brain will fill in any gaps that it wants to, and it'll make that cheek look a lot more natural. So I've decided here, I just want to give myself a bit of guidance on this side. So this again is ultramarine blue mixed with burnt umber to give me the black, and then I do switch to burnt umber when I start going lighter. I'm mixing it with the reds and the yellows. That's how I do the shift on there. And we're going to start on the other eye, and you're going to find I'm going to do exactly the same thing. See little small marks of where I want that value to go. and then I will move the brush and start somewhere else. And you see now I'm just going to even up the glasses as well. I'm going to use that brush to even up the glasses. I think I'm using a number 3 or a number 4 filbert. It's a number 4. It's a number 4 filbert that I'm using there. And again, you'll see I'm considering trying to pull myself away from the temptation of just continuing where I was. So why you just watch me just paint that? Let's talk about this audience thing. So what I said was, well, what I say to people is we have to define what our art stands for. For me, it's all about connecting people. Even my still lifes, I want people to see the modern and the old. I want to give them a space where they could sit and meditate and connect to themselves, that they can look at my still lifes. That's why they're very simplistic. They're not overcrowded, and give them simple, everyday objects that they can relate to. And then that helps them connect to themselves on some meditative or some question they're asking themselves, or just give them some space to be themselves and think about life in general and just think about whatever they want to be. And the portraits are all about connection. That's why it has to have the painting has to have a meaning. How am I connecting you to the person you're giving this to? The person who's commissioned, the father. Why? What is it for? Explain it to me so then I can connect. So you have to find the meaning in your art. What is it that you're doing? It can't just be brushstrokes. And once you find that, this is your distinctive capability or distinctive value. Oh, we won't use the word value because we get confused with painting, but your distinctive, message, why you're doing it, that will have value. That distinctive meaning that you have in your painting, it will have value to those people that love that meaning. Not to everybody, not everyone's going to like our art, but the people that I paint portraits for want that deeper connection. That's what they're looking for. Therefore, my meaning, that has a distinctive value to them. My meaning has a distinctive value to my audience. When you look at your art, what is the distinctive value your art is going to have to your audience? That's what you're looking for. And when you can do that, you can then have a message that's going to resonate with those people. You don't have to be shy about it, knowing that you can't please everybody. So let's not have any generic, waffle going on. We're going to be very specific. And so when we're speaking to people, we're actually speaking to the people who our message will resonate with. And then when you join your Facebook groups, your communities that align with that deeper meaning of your art, not just generic art collector groups, but people who love that, and you can get into some, for me, when you think about it, groups who do spirituality, groups that are helping people through struggles. There is such a wide audience out there. So once you get that, again, it's about building connections, not just exposure. And we'll cover a little bit off on that as we go through. But that's probably enough for today on my business journey. But, I just thought it's interesting sharing those learnings with you, of where I started and what I was doing. And hopefully, as you're building your journey and you're progressing, because as artists, that's all we do is constantly progressing, learning and moving forward. You might find something of value in there that you can incorporate. And sometimes we remember things we've forgotten. Oh, yes, I know now. So, back to the art, Michael. Yes, so now you see I'm doing exactly the same thing again. I'm just putting some little tiny marks in there. More, but keep the marks small. I want to change value. I'll vibrate that brush, dab them in thicker, thinner, heavier, lighter, totally irregular. It's a bit like you see a twig on a branch. You're painting one, and then every time the branch is going to turn, if you actually look at a twig, it's got kind of a knuckly joint on there, for lack of a better word. So if you stop your brush there and twist it and then go in the next direction, it will naturally form those little bumps and lumps that are all over branches. That is the same thing you want to be doing with wrinkles, these heavy wrinkles on his face. I want all those lumps and bumps. I want that unevenness. I don't want a smooth, steady line. And once I'm happy with the speckledy, marked positions that everything is in, I'll then get a lighter value, because I want some contrast now. So get a lighter value, and we'll start looking for blank pieces of canvas that we haven't filled. And I think that is one of the secrets that, we put down the paint where we want it. We put down the value where we want it. And we're happy with the color. We're happy with the value. And we say, yep. And it goes there. And we put it there. And we go, right, done. Let us get some more paint on a brush, either a different value or a different color, and then we will just finish that off. So just on the side of that eye, it just needs a little bit of grey blue. We'll call it grey blue. So that's the blue with the burnt umber and a little bit of white in there. And just to make it come into the other color, what I did was one of my favorite techniques. I'll actually paint the brown up to the eyeball and then cut back into the brown with the browny blue. So the two colors start to smudge together, and you get an effect that it might be a little bit more difficult to get if you just tried painting that funny shade. And people have difficulty matching that color, and they're going, I'm not quite sure how you got that color. It's not working. It's paint the dark browny red underneath, then mix your bluey grey so it's the right value, and then cut that back in on top of that burnt red, that's what you call it, and you'll end up with a wonderful texture, wonderful colouring in there. And as I go around and fill the eye in, you start to see it work. Now, the left eye, his left eye, as you're looking at the screen, it'll be on our right-hand side. The eye that I'm working on at the moment is a lot darker than the other eye. And if you look on the picture, you can see it's a lot darker. It's probably only, a couple of steps underneath. And I'll get that by adding a little bit more black heaviness around the eye rim. As you know, I never make the pupils round. You may glance and go, yeah, they're round. Then you'll get squinting in and go, they're not round. People's pupils are round and his aren't round. No, they're not round. Don't make them round. Just put a smudge of black in there, dab it in, squidge it in. It's in the right spot. That'll do. The brain will fix it. Always give something for their eyes to grip onto. You'll hear me say this all the time. Now, those colours, again, we haven't got anything really to choose from on our palette, so I'm just purely having to stick with the yellow, putting the red in there. It's a little bit too red, and just putting the burnt umber to get that. The most important thing, obviously, I'm looking for value. And as you saw me before, when I wanted to lighten it, I actually rather than using white, I put a little bit of more yellow in there to lighten it. And if that shifts it too much to the yellow side, I'll put a little bit of red in there, and I'll just play around with that, knowing that brown will darken it, blue will darken it, white will lighten it, yellow will lighten it. That's all I've got to play with. That makes learning to paint so easy. It really does, because you haven't got 16 colours on your palette and trying to remember which ones you mixed to get that bit. I know now that blue is purely titanium white with ultramarine blue, and then to take the blue out and make it more grey, more steely grey, because grey is blue, we're just putting burnt umber. It's my only choice. I can't put yellow in it, it'll turn it green, so I don't want green. So the only other choice I've got to do is put burnt umber in there. How simple is that? I really don't have many rules to remember. And when I want to match something, I'm basically going, oh yeah, that looks like it's a yellowy red. Well, guess what? I've got yellow and I've got red. Oh, too much red, let's put a bit of brown. Too much yellow, let's put a bit of red. Too much red, let's put a bit of yellow. Really, really easy stuff. Really easy stuff. And now you can see that this eye, and now don't get fooled thinking you've done the eyes wrong. Wait till you've got it and you'll see. So that colour go in, I would have actually painted, you missed that on the other side of the eye, sorry, but I would have actually put some of the burnty red colour, let's call it the burnty red colour, the browns underneath there, and then would have put my layer of the ultramarine blue and white with burnt umber on top of it. And it's giving me a three-dimensional effect on the left-hand side of his eye, on our far right-hand side. And again, now I'm just going to move around, and you see how much darker this appears. In fact, you could fool yourself into thinking that is way, way too dark, Michael. Oh my goodness, you're ruining it. It looks totally wrong. we have to just go, I've got the right value, I've got the right color. Inexperienced eyes will be now be telling you that's too dark. Experienced eyes will be going, yep, that's about right. I can see the shift now, and I know that as I get the other colors in, everything's going to come to light. Again, just moving around for filling in. Try not to stay in one spot. I'm more interested in getting different values. That's right on the edge of the canvas. I'm just making sure I cover the edge of the canvas there. And please, like, subscribe. We're doing a lady's portrait next week, so that'll be something a little bit different. We'll do something funky with her hair as well. It was a bit flat, I mean, there's no wind. On the photo shoots, they got all the wind and the hair goes, and I'm kind of going, that's the look I want, so that's what we're going to be doing. And next week, take some artistic liberties there. And you see, as I've finished, I've just gone a few little highlights where I just want to lighten it up a little bit. Let's start putting these underneath the cheek here. And you see each movement, because I'm not trying to do huge brush strokes, I'm getting the ability to then shift the value. And by doing that, and you're kind of going, oh, look at all the detail he's done. And now he hasn't done any detail. He's just shifted his values around as he's just filling in the blank canvas. And I'm just looking for that spot, fill that spot in. Let's see what underneath. And the lines that I put in there before are still they're a bit difficult to see. But if you look, you can actually see where those lines are and going, And I didn't worry about trying to preserve them too much either. So I made some disappear, some stayed. I didn't worry about that at all. Now you see as a brush, I just dab it in and just cut it around the bottom of those glasses to even those glasses out. Isn't that incredible? By not caring and by painting, I think Mark Carter says painting ugly. I like, it's called abstract, by painting abstract. Everything has to be abstract. Everything in nature is abstract. You look at a leaf, the coloring and the patterning on the leaf is totally abstract, and if you just try to paint really broad brush strokes, that'll give you a very stylized look, I suppose, but it's not the one that I'm looking for. I'm looking for this illusion of detail, and Sargent was really good on it for doing that, and he was renowned for being absolutely brilliant for just putting a value and a color, and you step back and it just was magical. You walk up to it and it falls apart, but step back and it's like, wow, how did he create that? And this is one of the techniques they're using. Now, we're going to go on from here. At the moment, we're doing a lot of heavy drawing, and nothing wrong with drawing. Only an amateur is going to complain about how you got your artwork onto that piece of paper. You'll see some of the great portrait artists. They'll grid their paper up. They'll actually, you'll look at it and it will just be a huge grid line. Then they'll grid up a photograph that they've taken from a photo shoot, and then they'll be copying verbatim and lots of detail, and they'll do it that way. Or then they'll say, oh, let's put a vertical line up. That'll be the center line of the head. We'll mark the top and the bottom. The top of the head and the bottom of the head. We'll put a horizontal line there on the angle if the head's on an angle, and then they'll get halfway between there and run another horizontal line, and that's where the center of the eyes are. Half between the eyes and the bottom of the chin, we'll run another horizontal line. That's the bottom of the nose. Halfway between the nose and the chin, run another horizontal line, and that's roughly where the mouth is going to go. That's how you get to that stage, and they're pretty simple little lines to put. Then we'll go from the bridge of the nose, we'll draw a triangle out, and that'll give us the corner points. Do an equilateral triangle from the bridge of the nose down to where the points of the eyes are. Then we can measure out from those points, and we'll go into some of this stuff more. I think they call them more advanced techniques, but they become very simplistic once you're used to seeing things like this. If you can just train yourself to see objects and not and shapes rather than a person, it's going to really, really improve your art. It's going to really, I must say, take some of the fun away in the aspect that you'll think, oh, I'll just put a few brush strokes. Oh, there's a nose, there's an eye. You'll suddenly realize that you're constructing things, and you're probably not looking at the likeness too much to start off with. You're looking at positioning, at shapes, where does the eyelid go, where's all my value mixtures going. So this is really, really good training for seeing where the value mixtures go, understanding when you look at somebody's face now, you'll stop seeing just a face and you'll start seeing the values on what other people would probably call the details. So that is why this sort of training is really good. But look, there are portrait artists out there that use tracing paper and trace things on. There are other artists out there in all sorts of genres that use projectors. I've seen some huge paintings that people have actually taken all the photographs, merged them together, say in Photoshop, and then they've used a projector to project that image up onto a canvas for themselves. Saves them a lot of time, and directly then they go mark it all in on the canvas, put colors where they're going, and once they're happy they got a base there, they'll switch the projector off and then just actually start working from the prints that they've done of the artwork that they actually want to produce. Lots and lots of techniques. The old masters use mirrors, they use reflectors, use all sorts. So the only person who's going to tell you that you shouldn't be painting like this, you should just be able to pick up a brush and magically imagine something. Professional artist is never going to tell you that kind of stuff. Professionals use every single tool at their disposal, and it's what suits them. But I will say, most professionals in this game will say, get used to drawing. Improve your drawing and you'll improve your portrait. And that's why I'm doing these heavy drawings, what I call heavy drawings at the start, just to show you that, hey, we can draw this. You can use a proportional divider or, just a set of calipers just to measure some distances and then start drawing. The more you draw, the more accurate you'll get things in place. And then as you go on to the other techniques, the Rembrandts and the Sargent techniques, you will, Velasquez, things will start to really seem very easy for you. So you start with basics, and I always say come back to basics as well. The more grounding, you go to a basketball game. Before the game, the guys are shooting baskets. You go to training, they're doing the basics. You go to, some of the professional singers in the world, they've got singing coaches. They're still doing their scales. They're still, doing their rhythms. They're still using their phraseology. They're working out how to say a word in a certain note. Unbelievable. Top bands like U2, he had problems with consonants, and so they practice the basics. All the top athletes practice the basics. So I would say to you, even as we advance, we should always still come back to the basics, drawing it, making sure our drawing's accurate, making sure we're putting marks. If there's crease lines on the face, where are those crease lines going? What are we doing to get that basic foundation? If you can drive this basic foundation and keep repeating it, it just makes you far, far more professional. And that is it. It's not a do it once and forget it. This is a lifetime skill, and we get better and better at drawing. Now, for me, drawing is like, oh yeah, I'll just sketch that there, and I just say, I'll just sketch some rough lines, and some people goes, oh geez, look at the detail he's put in his drawing. But it's only because I know the jiggly movements, and oh yeah, I'll just put those creases there, and I know what the end result's going to be, and you're going to get there too. And you're probably already there. There's going to be some of you listening, yep, I do that already, and maybe you don't want to do drawing anymore. Maybe you just want to draw with a brush. Drawing with a pencil will still improve your brush skills. So that's the basics as we do that. Now, you'll notice as I'm painting this nose, I'm getting some different value shifts again. You'll notice the marks are small, and if you looked on the painting on the right, the finished article, and that's what I'm showing you, the marks on the right can be quite deceiving because they don't look small. It looks like I've just put splodges of paint there, but it's working. Your brain's actually just filling everything in for me. That's all that's happening. So yeah, even when it looks like the pieces, especially at the top there, are just solid, they're not. Do a value shift in there as well. And you are good to go. And the illusion, as you can see just above, you can even start seeing just underneath where the glasses rim is, because I'm painting the direction of the nose and I'm using value shifts, you can actually see that it's starting to form. Now, this is one area where you probably want to do a little bit of blending because we don't want a hard line there. But it's a very, very soft blend. Don't get too excited. Don't do it too much. Certainly don't make it disappear. We still want that line there. But just a little light touch like I was doing with the brush there will go a long, long way. And you're just seeing now, I'm just filling in. What's interesting here as I build in, I've just changed the value again. As I'm working my way into that bright area, I'm changing the value, letting it mix with that first value. Very, very, you see the twisting of the brush there, just to give it its shape and its context. And I'm just slowly working my way in. It's not one color, it's not one value. And that's very important to realize with your highlights are never just a white or a yellow or red or, you know, whatever you want to make it. There's a gradient towards it. So the brightest is in the middle, but there's a gradient towards it. And whilst that may look fairly bright at the moment as we're painting it straight on top of that canvas, if you look on the painting on the right, you'll realize that none of these highlights are really, really bright at all. There's no white. There's no pure white at all. They're heavily knocked down with the yellow, with the browns, and with the reds. And I am just getting texture, this texture in that nose. So by dabbing and pulling, I'm pulling the paint off. Now, what happens with paint, especially with the lighter colors, if I can pull it forward, it'll actually give you the appearance of being brighter than what it is. And it'll actually bring the paint forward, not because I pulled the paint forward off the canvas, but lighter colors tend to sit a little bit further forward than the darker colors. So I can use that to my advantage. And as we start to form, you see that the lines going on. It's not that I want to be delicate here, it's that I don't want a heavy mark. I have to leave room for all my other values to sit in there. And you'll see I'll go away, I'll put that in there, and now I really have to think and say, okay, do I want to work on this more? Do I want to come on, what am I going to do here to change this up so I don't get entrapped that line becomes way, way too thick and way, way too overdone. And that's all I'm doing. And you see as I'm working around, it's just different values. You saw them on the palette. The colors haven't changed. I don't have any colors on my palettes to change it. If I want to keep this flesh color going. So the only thing I've got for you to do is just change the light over dark, which is what the values are. And as we go in, we've just to give you an idea, this painting with all the mixing, because I spend probably 2/3 of my time mixing on the palette, as I would to, and I think sometimes 70% of the time's on the palette and 30% of the time is just actually on the canvas. So it's something just to get used to. You'll do more painting on your palette than what you will do on the board. But when I put all these videos that I've done, remember I'm fairly new to YouTube now, so I just threw them all in a timeline and tried to cut them up the best I could to make the video interesting for you guys. There's probably about 16 hours of actual footage. So the actual painting here, including palette time, was about 16 hours. And I can say that probably 70% of the time in this one was on the palette. So what's that? That's almost 10 hours was painting on the palette as compared to 5 or 6 hours actually doing this painting. So that shows you what is actually going on and what it actually takes to produce. Now this has a lot of movement in the values. There's a lot of value movements going on in this, so sometimes it does take a little bit longer than others to do. But yeah, I would say that was probably another one of my learnings that I found out rather quickly when I went into this game of art, that I just wanted to get the paint on the canvas. Let me paint something. Not quite. Don't quite work like that. Not when you're doing this style. And even my still lifes, they're just not this. It's done in this same methodical movement. So I'm getting the effects that I really, really want to get. So yeah, 16 hours of painting, and say 70%, so that's 7, 8, 9, 10, that's about 10 hours on the palette, as compared to 6 hours of actually on the canvas. And I've cut a lot of this out. As you can see, we're jumping, but I'm just trying to make this interesting for yourself. What we're going to move on to now, I'm not actually going to move to the left-hand side. I'm going to do the other cheek. I want to start getting that dark line under there. I'm noticing that I wouldn't mind having the mustache in here. So there's no right or wrong in how you're going to approach. And you'll see the wiggly brush marks on the. You'll see me twist and twirl, because mustaches are twisty and twirly. Hair is twisty and twirly. Don't draw straight lines. You're not painting a wall. So twisty and twirly is the way to go, if that's a word. That makes sense to you guys. And you really see it. It looks weird, doesn't it? Honestly, it really does. As artists, we do some weird. I think it's only the painter at the actual easel can see what the end result is. That's why I've got the picture on the other side, so you can go, "Oh, it actually worked out." But when you look at it originally, it's like, "Oh my goodness." Yeah. So there's always learnings to do as you progress in. So. What I was saying, there's no right or wrong on how you approach a portrait, by the way. We're doing this as if we're going to paint a still life. So I'm just picking objects. So I'm going to treat the mustache as an object. It's no different than if I was painting a still life and there was, say, a bouquet of flowers there, so there was a rose, or maybe sitting there it's a peach, or maybe there's a cut up orange and there's some orange peel. I'd be looking at the orange and going, okay, so that is the object that I'm painting. But it is interesting to note that when you're painting here, even though I'm not trying to paint here, I'm trying to paint values in there, I am thinking of the movement underneath. I am thinking of the movement and how a mustache would grow. Now, some people say, well, the mustache is straight. They're straight hairs. Why are you wriggling? Because they're not straight. They may have the illusion of being straight, and I'm sure as we progress along here and you look at the picture on the right, you go, oh, it's fairly straight on that side, yet it's wiggly on this side. Your brain will straighten it out. As we get more values in here and we get more texture in here, your brain will do that job. It'll straighten it out for me. And you can automatically see it as we start to fill some of those canvas gaps up, or some of the gaps in the canvas, up. You can see straight away that, now it's starting to look a bit straighter, even though it's not. So the wriggliness stops you painting nice even lines. It puts it thin, thick, thin, jiggly all over. They don't connect. I can move around. And then as I'm starting to do the darks and the lights, and I do bounce around a little bit with mustaches, and I want a little bit of brown in there, because it gives something depth. If you look at an older man with a mustache, it's not jet black, it's not jet grey. Some are, but very rare. Most of them are multicolours. They've got all different types of colours in there. And all I'm doing now is I've just putting different values on the end of this brush and just dabbing it in and brushing in the direction that I think the mustache should be going. Now, that mustache isn't finished. But I've decided, okay, now I've got something for my eyes to lock onto. I'll think about that a little bit more and I'll come back to it. Let's go finish this birthmark on the other side of the face here. He's got a birthmark coming over here. So now I'm trying to work in and go, okay, where do I want to go next? And rather than get bogged down in that mustache and maybe overdo it, because less is more, that's my rule. When you're doing mustaches and hair, try to do a little bit, move away, do something else. Then if you look at it afterwards, you can go back and add a little bit more, move away. Don't just keep at it, or you're going to turn around and go, oh my goodness, I put way too much in there. I should have cut that back. I went too far. And hey, we've all done it. We've all been there. I'm sure a few of you are smiling because you're going, yeah, I've done that. We all have, eh? So if there's people who are beginning and they're just starting out, join the club. If you're having a crack and you're going, oh, I did too much. I had too strong a colour. I was too light, too dark. Oh, I did too much work on that and I ruined the effect. Yeah, well, welcome to the art world. We're all in the same boat. We've all done this. So as I come down here now, as you see, the brush marks now are just trying to move in the direction of the face. You see, I wasn't too concerned whether I'd rather have that direction moving rather than trying to worry too much about the glasses, because I can just put the glasses back in. And remember, I don't have to worry if the glasses are jet black, because when I put black over the lighter color, it will lose some of its intensity, so it'll change its value of the black as well, and that's perfectly fine. That just adds a little bit more detail that I may not have had if I hadn't done it that way, and these happy accidents, as they call them. But one thing you'll notice is I'm building this cheek. I'm resisting the temptation to do two bigger marks. They're nice small marks. Skin is very... I don't have to paint the texture of the skin. All the little marks you've got on your skin. I don't have to worry about that. If I keep my brush marks small and I change the values around a lot, then it will, to the person looking at it, look like skin. It'll take on a flesh look. It'll go, oh yeah, I can see all the marks in there. You can't, just your eyes are telling you they're there when they're actually not. And so we can just continue to build. I do a little bit of a section there. And now the line that looked a little bit funny before, that cheek line, starts to look a little bit better. Again, I think I've done enough in there, so I want to move back to where I was before. Maybe put a couple of highlights in there. And now I'm looking for blank canvas, and I'm still moving that brush in the direction of the face. That really does help. And that helps with not having to blend. I don't get a big fan brush and start washing over everything. And there are some artists that do that, by the way. They will paint that and then they'll smooth it and then they'll go back over and they'll smooth it. And it's, everyone's got their own techniques. I want to show you a technique where you can just put this in and have the confidence in this loose brushwork. So loose brushwork does not mean just slapping it on any old how and, oh, I'm loose, look, I'm rough. No. Loose brushwork just means you're not going to overwork it. It just means I think about what color and what value is going in a particular area. I put it in that area and I leave it alone. That's loose brushwork when you haven't overworked it. Loose brushwork is not rough, slap it on anywhere, don't worry about it. Oh, well, it's loose, so no, that's not loose brushwork at all. That's just bad brushwork. Loose brushwork is exactly what we're doing here. We're deciding where this value has to sit. We're putting it in there, and then we're moving. I'll just move the camera for you there, because we start to go lower. We're going to actually just put this beard as it jiggles. Now watch the brush as it comes down here. Now this could be called loose brushwork. I'm jiggling and jabbling, but I know the value is there, and I'm just twisting and moving that brush around so I don't get an even edge, because I definitely don't want an even edge. It's a beard. And you might go, oh, it's not looking like a beard. No, it's not. It's never going to look like a beard on your first few brush strokes. But look, as I put those values, I just want to draw your attention to the edges where I put those values, how uneven they are, how they're not straight lines. And that brush going in all different directions, you see even more values coming in. I've seen people paint these beards like this and paint the whole hair and the whole beards, and they won't even touch them. What you get on the value shifts is what you get. They won't do anything else over the top. I tend to, on this one, I wanted to put a few hairs over the top, and I do that a little bit later on. But the underlying structure is only to look at the value shifts of the beard. Now we're going to come over the other side now and darken it up and put the value shifts over there. And you see, I'm moving, not staying in one area and trying to, complete the whole beard in one section, working from one side to the other. No, we'll just move around. And now you start to see it start to make even more sense. Underneath the lips here, we'll make sure we get a nice line, a different value shift over there. And now the brush is moving how I'd imagine those hairs underneath his lips would move. Downwards, and that's all I'm doing there. I don't have to be too careful. And again, that real jiggly dabbly, and I guess you get your own brush marks. You get your own way of doing it. You don't have to do it my way. You do it the way you feel comfortable. I'm using an overhand grip on this, so all my fingers are on top and the thumbs underneath to get this effect. Other ways I hold my brush, because I want to ask, how are you actually holding your brush? I'll have I've got a damaged hand. My right hand is damaged, so I've got part of a finger missing. So I put the 2 fingers on top of the brush and 2 fingers underneath, and I'm basically using my thumb then to vibrate the brushes around as I'm painting and squiggle them around. And by having that kind of a grip, not a pencil grip, I think it creates more abstractness in my strokes. I want all my strokes to be abstract, not even strokes, and I don't want them in a regular pattern. And there you go. See, I forced myself to go somewhere else, put a few marks down there, and then go somewhere else and put a few marks. So even though I'm going to treat this beard area as an object, I'm actually moving around. And his beard was quite interesting. It was on one side, it was a bit of bald patch arriving and not on the other side. So if you're wondering about that, that is actually how he is. And he's always been like that. So it was like, okay, that's how you're getting painted then. It's going to be your son looking at you. He's got to look at it and go, yep, that's dad. So again, you can see the gaps. There's gaps all over the place, and I just have to go with those gaps and just fill them in with a different value in my dabby jiggly movement, all abstract. And again, it probably doesn't look right at the moment. We're not finished yet. We're just putting in those bases into there, and you'll see I'll leave it alone now, and I'll go over to the other side. This is probably the hardest thing to do, when you've painted a section, you want to make that perfect before you move on. Don't do that. Just block it in to where it is and go somewhere else, and give your brain time to think about what else you want to add to it, what you think it needs to bring that little piece to life. Don't worry about it. Just go somewhere else. There's a little piece over here. I can put 2 or 3 values into this area over here and just fill that in. I'll just go get a nice little spot. There we go. And I've got another. I'll put a darker spot. I'll put a little lighter spot. Smudge it in there. And now I'm going, okay, I'm a bit happier with what's happening over there. Dab the edges a little bit so I haven't got a hard ridge. And then let's bring it down into this beard. And that's all I'm doing. I think the secret to abstract realism is in the word abstract, is to keep your brushstrokes abstract. Which is one, keep your brush moving and jiggling and twisting and turning, never trying to be perfect. And the other thing to have more abstraction is not to concentrate all your stuff just in one area. I'd love to know what you think about this. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, do all that kind of stuff, give me a like, but write your comments underneath. What do you think about this style of approaching something? Do you think this would be helpful to you as you practice? It's really a training. It's practice. When we're doing paintings for real, we tend to do them a little bit different. But for training, I think it's great practice. We're going back to basics, basically. So, write your comments underneath. Tell me what you'd like to see. Is there something I'm doing that you're saying, explain it some more, or is there something you'd like me to paint? We will be painting a lady next, and then after her, we're going to paint a still life. I'm dying to paint a still life with you. It's going to be super exciting because I love painting still lifes, and I'll be able to explain all the techniques I'm doing in the still life that apply to this portrait painting. So that's going to be exciting. Now the lips that we're painting, you see I'm just getting the darks in there at the moment. Then we'll put another value shift into these lips. And you notice the crease line in the center is not even, it's jiggly. The line on top with the mustache obviously is going to be jiggly as well. Very important you don't draw nice, smooth, straight lines for lips. I've got a couple of lumps and bumps. I decided I'll put another bump under there in the middle. Lips tend to have that little hollow bit in the center, so let's put something to represent that. I can fix it later. Let's put another bump under here, and then slowly you'll see the darks are starting to come down. So the darks are into the corners, and as we come lighter, and one of the things I like to do is get this, what I call the base layer of the lip. Now, we are painting ala prima. It's wet in wet, of course. Now, this is my little technique. So white is now on the tip of this brush. So rather than try and mix a pink color, a pinkish color, all I'll do now is I'll dab the white in. You can see I'm dabbing it in there on this bottom, on his bottom lip here. And then I'm going to be, you'll see I'll wipe the brush off. And then what I'll do is I'll come and very lightly smudge. But I'm smudging in a downward motion, wiping that. And then I've moved on to do the ear. But you can see that smudging motion has just given us a more natural look. And I've just filled the bottom of the lip in with some orange and a little bit more reddy marks. I actually painted the whole bottom in orange, by the way, and then dabbed the red in and then smudged it exactly like I did that white on the lips to give me that effect. A little bit of light went on the bottom of that chin where I could see it and left it alone. Now we go to the ears. Now, ears are funny because you can trick people into an ear. Ears are kind of curvy. They've got a dark curvy bit on the top and they've got a bit of a lumpy darky bit at the bottom that's got a funny shape to it. And then we can trick people into think it's an ear. And someone who's seen me paint ears before, they zoom in and go, it's not an ear, it's terrible. You step back 2 or 3 feet and it's like, oh my goodness, it works. This is something you have to get confident at. So the only thing we need to worry about with ears, that top section is going to have that darkish area that's kind of a squiggly bit at the top. Then it's going to have a darker piece at the bottom, almost like almost like a triangle, but a bit of a pointy thing, you know it is at the bottom. So you kind of know that exists on an ear. So we'll just put that in there. And then we know we're going to have some highlights. So we'll have a highlight just above the darky bit there. We'll have some highlights sitting on the top. And I just work around. I need some reds in there. There's a bit more blood into an ear. And we can just piece this together slowly. Nothing too exciting. And all I'm doing now is just looking for value shifts. And as you see, there's not much in that at all, is there? That's just a few squiggles, a few dabs of dark and lights, a couple of highlights where we know they're going to go. Bring the hair down a little bit now over the top. And there we go. And now we'll go and paint his jumper. He's wearing a black jumper, by the way. It's a black woolly jumper. So no, I'm not going to try and paint wool. I don't think I could. I know people say you shouldn't say that, but no, I'm not going to paint wool at all. What I'm going to do now is just paint different values, because wool, when you look at a woolly jumper, it's that blacky, bluey, and it's all over the place. And by painting that will give me the impression that he's wearing this sweater underneath. So I've only got to shift the values slightly, mix those values up, put some black lines in there as well. So it looks like there's some shape and some movement going on. But this is a classic. If I can change the values of this jumper like I'm doing now, it is just going to work for me so well. And I don't have to worry about wool. You see people paint marble floors, but if you walk up to the marble in the painting, it is rough. It is like, oh my, I've seen some and gone, this looked like, from 3 or 4 feet away, this actually looked like polished marble. It only has to do with the values and the way they're doing their brush strokes. So for a jumper, you see, I'm just squiggling this brush around, flicking it here, flicking it there, making sure I've got these value differences happening. So you've got darks and lights all muddling together, a bit like you would on a woolly jumper, not trying to paint a surface, but just trying to say, okay, this is a mixture of the lights and the darks, nothing too smooth in here, make it a bit rough, and she'll be right, as we like to say in Australia. And there we go. We'll just cut this in now. I'm just trying to even that edge up because I do want to give him a neck. Now, in the actual photograph, there's no neck, believe it or not, which makes the head look really funny. So if you get a photograph and you've been with a client and you've photographed them, you're coming back and you realize that, the jumper was really high. They've run out of neck. Just use your imagination. Just put a little bit of neck in there because it will connect the head to the rest of the body. I don't know how better to say that to you guys, but that's the only reason I'm doing that. If that was black jumper right up to that beard, it would look odd. It wouldn't look right. And you might get away with that in a photograph, because you can get away with lots in photographs because they are different. But in a painting, we know that he has a neck. Let's just give him, even if he's not in the photograph, we don't worry about things like that. We're artists. We take artist liberties, and we are actually going to give him a neck. And there you go. We're almost done. We're just filling those last little bits of values. You'll see now when I do this, I will actually go back onto the jumper to give the jumper a little bit more definition. I like to do a bit of smudging now. I want that colouring mixing with the black, so I do a little bit of smudging around the edge there, and then I will come back and cut a nice cleaner line with the jumper. What this does is give this, gives it almost this three-dimensional effect, makes it look a lot more natural, and stops the eyes getting jammed onto something. So, and we'll just soften that line down. And there we've got the edge of his jumper. I'm sorry my voice keeps going in and out. I keep moving away from the microphone. And then I get close to the microphone, so you're probably going, stop jumping around on the microphone and stay where you are. You'll see now I'll just put some little brush strokes on the bottom of that beard so we can get it into the neck to stop that from looking any weirder. So it's not a rough edge, because there's no way it's going to be a rough edge with a beard. And we're just painting it in the right direction. Now I'll just pop back up to the hair. Remember I said I like to step back, give it some time to breathe almost, then go back, flick in some marks. Nice. I'm not painting here. You see that's a number 5 brush there that I'm using, and I'm just flicking it in, put some dark marks in there. Yeah, and you see I'm just twirling around. I want it coming down here. That's all I am doing. I'm just flicking them marks in there to give it that little bit of texture, give it that bit of irregularity, or, as we like to say, keeping it abstract. And that what will create the illusion. And I think we're just about getting to the end of Albert. Nothing too hard. He looks complicated when you first look at him. But really nothing too hard if we just keep and obey the rules that we've set ourselves. That's all we're looking at. There he is. Albert is finished.
Well, thanks for joining me this week as we painted Albert. Hope you really enjoyed that. Hope you got a lot out of it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, leave your comments. Tell me how you think I'm doing my filming. I'm trying to get there. Filming when you're painting is a little bit different, knowing how to set the cameras up and so forth, but lots of fun. And that's what art is all about, isn't it? It's about having fun, having that journey, about having those experiences. Love to hear your comments down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our up-and-coming show. Next week we're going to be painting Rachel. It's commissioned by her husband, and I'm going to do something a little bit funky with the hair to just give it a little bit more life to the actual portrait. So until then, guys, have a ton of fun with your painting, and I'll see you next week.